What's up, y'all? Welcome back. Recording live from somewhere. This is the Scaling Ventures podcast. We are building a portfolio of niche vertical SaaS firms that punch like $50 million giants. Yeah, and I finally got my boy Kjael back with me. As much fun as I'm sure it is to hear me ramble dolo. Welcome back, my friend. I'm excited to chop it up with you today.
Yeah, same. It's been a while, and I've honestly been missing these sessions. It feels like it's been months of just living in the weeds, going through spreadsheets, standing up systems. Now it's like, let's touch the people again.
Let's get back to it. Yeah, dude. And
Yep.
so there's obviously a theme here. We're basically tuning and polishing like everything, but like, real kind of fundamental stuff. So last week we talked about the system that informs all systems, which is this concept of a knowledge base hub, which is kind of the single system of truth for all playbooks, process, procedure, operating manuals, internal market insights, you name it. And
Love
now
it.
we're revisiting the headline today is the framework for turning ideas into high impact results. And for us, it was so crazy, dude. It was August of 23 that we kind of an OKR was vetting and selecting a framework to guide decisions across any kind of strategic decisions, right? And so we're drinking from the Dalio hose. We're I guess borrowing from some of the greats who were very kind of framework driven, algorithm driven. And so our attempt was to go out into the world and find something that was flexible enough to be applied to any kind of decision, whether that's hiring, growth initiatives, product improvements, etc., but also custom, like flexible enough that you could really get granular and size that stuff up. So this is kind of an extension of that where we're diving a lot deeper. And this was a function of driving internal clarity among our camp. And basically it was like, oh, we have this RICE definition and we kind of aim small, miss small with scores of 1 to 4. We left it kind of subjective. And this was us tuning that in a major way. So we'll provide some context. We'll revisit how RICE works, and then we'll end with some definitions and guidelines for adoption, which is really kind of the meat of the post. So the bottom line is every firm has, I guess it's rare that you have a shortage of ideas, right? Where it's like, we could fix this, we could build that, we could hire this person, we could test that. And so that's
Don't
there.
forget your users and your customers. They're also hitting you with feedback in real time too, and those NPS surveys. What do?
So it's just a fire hose, right? And so I guess separates the folks that just swim in chaos from those that execute is some type of filtration mechanism that takes all that good stuff at the top and squirts out what's going to yield the biggest impact so you can kind of organize resources accordingly and get to the execution. And so without a framework like this, some of the drawbacks, or before we really adopted RICE, is very clear, like there's no clear priorities. Everything feels urgent. You jump over here, you try this, you jump over there, you bounce around, you boil the ocean, you're running in place effectively. There's a ton of subjectivity in decision making where it's like, no, this has the biggest impact. No, this has the biggest impact. Well, this is, blah, blah, blah. And so you just spin around in circles and you don't really get to the execution. And we know execution is king. And then there's totally inconsistent resource use. So you've got stuff that's super time intense that never provides any kind of ROI. And then you've got stuff that's just sitting on the sidelines that would create a huge impact and just kind of sitting there idle. So none of those things are good. And when you adopt a framework, and all to be said, like trying to introduce more metaphor to convey the point. And the metaphor in this case is you're navigating a sprawling city and nobody's got GPS. So drivers are picking their own route. They don't know the distance, traffic, or destination. It's crazy. And then all of a sudden you give them a GPS. Now all the drivers are getting to the high impact destinations first. Everyone knows where everybody's at. So GPS, usually I go with a factory. This time we went with GPS. And so what you can expect kind of on the other side of this is objectivity becomes a standard. So it's like, well, we can't make that decision. We haven't scored it, so we don't have an objective point of view. And another piece of commentary that we make quite often is we don't have a relative point of view. So should we do this thing? It's like, I don't know. Where does it sit in the spectrum of other stuff that we could be working on? So you start to get to this place where you can't make decisions unless you objectively understand it and you understand it on a relative basis and how it fits into stuff that's competing, for resources. So that becomes a standard, and that's a really good feeling because it's less like, well, I think, and maybe this, and that stuff's all useful. But as we say around here, show me the data.
Exactly. Making decisions can no longer be a matter of, hey, does the CEO like it? Does the CFO say we have budget? Okay, yeah, let's just go do that thing. It's like, no, that's not how it can be. It's going to feel like back in the day when you had, before MapQuest. You just look for the cemetery or that landmark and say, okay, make a left at that landmark, and you're driving like, wait, did I pass it? Is it there? No, we need a GPS for our business using the Rice framework.
Oh, and you raise a great point because so often decisions default to seniority,
Yeah, it's like,
which is,
yeah, I just want to keep my job, so as long as that guy likes it, let's do that. And it's like, no.
and then tie goes to the leader, right? So it's like, I don't know, CEO, what do you think? And it's like, oh God. As soon as you make decisions, like, what do you think is usually bad outcome on the other side of that.
Yeah, it's all gut feeling.
So execution becomes more predictable and efficient. Obviously, teams are more aligned on what's important and why, and how the work that they do on a day-to-day basis trees up into objectives for the business and outcomes. So all to say, we connect cause and effect, which is very important, right? No one likes digging a hole feeling like you're not getting anywhere. When it's like, hey, I know that if I put this shovel in the ground, I can dig it a foot of thing, and we're trying to dig because there's a gold thing down there, et cetera. So anyway, and then predictability increases, which is ultimately what we're trying to do. We're trying to say we're going to do something that's thoughtful and then do it. And that sounds so simple, but saying what you do and doing what you say is a great way to be a differentiated human in this world. And it starts with having useful frameworks like this at your employ. So
It's so simple.
Anyway, again, and then this is back to a core pillar, right? So if we tie it back to last week, your Notion hub, whatever it is, should have a thing that's like, this is how we make strategic decisions. And for us, it's this. So let's go in. So how it works. And actually, I'm going to share my screen because there's some useful stuff here. So for the readers, or the listeners, we'll do our best to. Oh boy, let's see if this works. Boy, ARCs. Oh boy, I might have to restart my thing. That would be catastrophic. I just got the Mac Mini and it is so lit. Oh, all right, I'm going to do that later. It's not going to let me share my screen though. All right, well, let's see if it does. Did it work? Yeah. All right, radical. Beautiful. All right, so there's 4 components. And reach, and this is a 1 to 10. We used to do 1 to 4, and you need some surface area. Like the trade-offs here, it's like, well, is it a 9 or a 10? And it's like, God. So don't get hung up or wrapped around the axle, as we say, with that. Whereas 1 to 4, it's like 1 terrible, 4 off the charts. And there's not a ton of wiggle room. Obviously, it's not 1. We've spoken about this a lot, but what you don't want with 1 to 5 is everyone's like, it's a 3, it's a 3, it's a 3. And then all of a sudden, it basically might as well not exist. It's not useful. So for reach, we updated ours to be 1 to 10 because you do need spectrum. And then when we touch on the guidelines, ideally, and with ChatGPT, it's like, here's the decision, score it. And once you have objective parameters like that, it'll squirt out the rice. It's just beautiful. So anyway, reach 1 to 10 is the size.
One other thing I would add there too, it's like when you're looking at the spectrum between 1 to 10, another good way to look at it is a lot of people are conditioned to NPS scores. So if you want to look at anything that's 8 and above, okay, that we can prioritize. Anything that's middle of the road, we'll say that's the neutral section, and less than a 4, we'll say that's the detractors, right? That's a good way to frame it too.
And you can t-shirt size it too. So it's like small, medium, large, small 1 to 3, medium 3 to 5, 6, large 7 to 10, whatever, and then kind of go from there. What you don't want to do is spend all your time debating whether it's a 6 or a 7 or an 8 or a 9. But
we don't care.
And use an LLM to digest that and give you some point of view, and then go. All right, so reach 1 to 10, the size of the applicable audience affected. So this is going to be tuned based on your context, but typically it's customers, prospects, partners, and the internal team. Those are the core kind of constituents in play. Impact, and this is about behavior. So how significant is the change in behavior on the other side of whatever this initiative is? In behavior, revenue, or efficiency. And there's some different ways to slice that cap, but impact is the boom. What's the boom? Confidence is a percentage, 0 to 100%. And that's basically a degree of certainty around reach and impact. So the more data you got, the more confident you should be. The more it's like, I think, and you just want to be clear. It's okay if it's a hypothesis or if it's an idea. You just want to be clear that like, I don't have great confidence in this. And then lastly is effort, which is 3 to 100 hours. And so that's one that you want to cap. And it'll depend on your context, right? I mean, if you're building nuclear power plants, effort's probably a spectrum of thousands of hours. But anyway.
Or in pharmaceutical, it's a year-long project.
It's like, well, the effort's about 10 years. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Drug trials, 5 years.
It's like, well, let's get started because the rice score slaps. So, and then effort is 3 to 100 hours, and how much total work is required to take this to the next level. You want to assign a dollar value to the labor hours. So that's how you really back into kind of ROI driven type stuff. Here's a quick visual of the formula. So it's reach 1 to 10 times impact 1 to 10 times confidence 0 to 100% divided by effort. And just like sales velocity with cycle time in the denominator, ooh, I almost screwed that up, but I didn't. Effort is in the denominator. Effort is the one that swings things heavy. And so obviously you're looking for high reach, high impact, high confidence, low effort. Cool. When to use RICE? Prioritizing features, growth, and like anytime you like for thoughtful prioritization. So features, growth initiatives, process improvements. You can put a dollar cap on it. Like anything that's above $1,000, we run it through the RICE. Comparing multiple opportunities to focus on what matters most. Obviously for product road mapping, growth initiative road mapping, quarterly planning, very, very handy. You don't want to use it when your hair's on fire and you need to get the thing done. You don't want to use it when it's clear this is in some bucket of level of priority and you just bias towards action and get her done. So this is when it makes sense to slow down a little bit is the bottom line. All right. Definitions and guidelines. So reach we've already touched on. So let's actually just jump into guidelines. So, and I'm not going to read off a bunch, but basically, so in the same in recruiting, right? If you have recruiting scorecards, if it's like, hey, this thing is scored from 1 to 4, what you want to do then is define this is what a 1 would look like. This is what a 4 would look like, to strip out as much thinking and subjectivity as humanly possible. So these guidelines are meant to do that. So I'll just read a couple. So for reach, 1 is, or let's do the t-shirt size. Let's do 1, 5, and 10. So 1 is extremely narrow, affects a tiny subset of internal users or a niche use case. Example would be like a back-end reporting change for the internal finance team. A 10 or a 5 is meaningful, affects a broad portion of your audience. This would be a new pricing tier targeting a significant chunk of customers, as an example. This is funny. A 10 is universal, affects 100% of customers, prospects, and partners. And this would be a fundamental platform shift. For example, new product architecture, major monetization change, a new partnership channel. Well, I guess that would be kind of limited, but yes, that I take all that back. That would be limited to that specific audience. And what we're looking for now is reach. So that's kind of the spectrum of reach. Let's move into the spectrum of impact. And I'll bounce in a little bit so you can see this puppy better. Sorry, I should have done that before.
No,
So impact
guidelines are like, it's funny how like humans need guidelines and ChatGPT AI needs guidelines too. Like it just creates a framework for you to think within and add questions.
And once you have these guidelines down, oh my goodness, you just use an LLM. And it's like here's the thing, score it.
I would love to see this as a social experiment executed with companies where like they make decisions based on seniority. So it's like, okay, it's no longer your owner and the CFO making the decisions. Like put all your ideas in this framework and let's see how it fleshes out, right? Awesome social experiment.
100%. Or it's like, hey, you guys let the boss decide. We're going to run this framework and we'll see who gets to the finish line faster.
Yeah, who gets approval faster, right?
Well, that's like, or who gets to the outcome, whatever it is. And it's like, I'll bet the rest of my career on the camp that's not trusting the CEO's gut.
Yeah.
All right. So now on to impact. So again, this is magnitude of effect. So that's customer behavior, revenue, acquisition velocity, operational efficiency. These are all things that kind of are considered under magnitude. A score of 1, the definition would be minimal, barely noticeable improvement. Example is minor UI tweak, non-critical bug fix. A 5, let's do a 6. Large, strong impact on retention, revenue, or efficiency to the tune of 5 to 10%. This an example would be self-service purchasing, reducing manual work, noticeable retention boost. 10 is transformational, redefining customer behavior, market positioning, or company scalability. Examples like this would be new business model unlocking 10x revenue scale, market defining features. Big impact. Oh yeah.
That's a tall order. Next revenue scale, that's a tall order.
Yeah, let's find those. Those are the 10s I'm looking for. All right, confidence then is a percentage, and you might say, well, that doesn't really need to be defined. but I think you'll think again when we say this out loud. So 10% confidence is pure speculation, no data or validation. And that would be like an idea with no supporting research or customer insights. 50% is medium confidence, some supporting data, but gaps remain. Examples would be customer feedback or market insight, but no direct measurement. 90 to 100% would be near certainty, clear data and past experience to prove it, A/B tests, strong customer demand, past implementation success. So this is like, yeah, that's what you're looking for. And the other thing too is, like, this is kind of a heady element around this topic, but RICE scores are dynamic too. And so like a clear activity can be, this score changes if you improve your confidence. So if you're a real advocate for something and it's not scoring well, you can take it upon yourself to go beef up your confidence. So, hey, let's do a survey. Let's, whatever, let's gather benchmarks. Let's go find data, or let's do this thing, which will allow us to harvest the data that we need to build confidence around this activity. And away you go. Reach and impact are usually pretty defined, but confidence is dependent on, you can improve it, is the bottom line.
Yeah, I would say the same as well. You can find multiple ways to skin a cat and just be physically effort. And that in itself will make the RICE score also more dynamic.
Totally. And with effort, it's like, hey, this thing, if you can find a short circuit to cut the effort in half, it's the number one priority. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then here, this is quantitative. So, this is very measurable. So the spectrum there, I think the takeaway here is that you need to define the lower end and the top band. So the min and the max for what you would kind of assume is reasonable in your context. So for us, 3 hours is like a focused effort. 100 hours is like a dedicated sprint item, or that's somebody's job for 3 weeks nonstop doing 40-hour weeks. So that puts it in perspective a little bit. That's a wrap, my guy.
I was ready to jump into the revenue model, the math model, the data model, you name it.
Sorry if that was it's like RICE score, baby. This is, because that thing I sent you had all of ours.
Yeah, so I was going through the book last night. I was like, yeah, this is the arithmetic I need to learn right now. How do we exponentially scale the revenue of a business if we just change one of these denominators?
So for context, we have a thing that's basically like key frameworks and concepts, and a lot of it is revenue architecture stuff. And then the
we
RICE
live by it.
is for how we execute decisions. So
thank you, Jocko.
Right. Yeah. And I think with that, for the love of the game, for everybody out there operating, playing the game, we're rooting for you. Hopefully this is helpful. If you think any of this is misguided, we're all ears. Let's get better together. And then the obligatory, if this helps you, share it with someone or subscribe.
Or ping us on LinkedIn. Let us know.
Yeah.
I've gotten a few LinkedIn messages. Thank you all.
Or do something that lets us know, because the feedback loops are pretty terrible in this context. Like, that's back to that Spotify thing. I was like, whoa, this thing's actually ripping, but we only have 4 subscribers or whatever.
Right. Engagement's huge, but no one's really subscribing. So it's like, hey, if something worked, tag us and say, look, I followed your advice. It was amazing. Or it's like, nah, it wasn't that great. Could we hop on a call? Look, we're open, okay?
Totally. Well, Kjael, for the love of the game, I'll see you next week.
For the love of the game.
Or actually, I'll talk to you probably in an hour, but this was very fun.
In a few minutes.
All right. Peace, buddy.